1, 2, 3, ow! Wake up, kids, we got the dreamer's disease. Age 14, we got you down on your knees. So polite, you're busy still saying please. Enemies who when you're down and your friend. Every night we smash the Mercedes-Benz. First we run and then we laugh till we cry. When the night is falling, you cannot find the light. Your dream is dying. Hold you tight. Hi, Alana.
Thank you. That was fabulous.
I warn you. Welcome to the Greatness Machines, guys. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and boy, do we have an amazing guest, my friend, Alana Winter. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello.
Oh, that was I forgot how much I like that song. Guys, for those of you that are new to the show, you will know that we're about two things: those who are living their passion and people who are creating greatness in the world. And Alana is doing both those things. So we have a little bit of time here for her to share all her greatness and her amazingness. And before we get started, though, I'm going to give a little bit of your bio. Is that cool?
Totally.
Actually, before I give bios, I always do a little bit of origin stories. So our friend Tony Lilios, I think, made the intro. Is that correct?
Totally, that's correct.
I screwed up. Tony was supposed to be on the show, and I booked him when I was on spring break. So you beat him to the punch. So Tony, you're up next. You're like, what a treat. You're like, oh, what song is he going to sing, Tony? But yeah, we met through Tony. We both are fast friends from our background in the Entrepreneurs Organization. We spent much time there in our own respective worlds, and now the worlds have collided, as they do sometimes, on the Greatness Machine. But that's how Alana and I met, and I do want to give her formal bio, so I'm going to pull that up here. Guys, Alana is a serial entrepreneur, and she has grown 4 separate enterprises, a few with global attention. She's a master coach and a team facilitator. She's the president of Transformative Forum, and she runs retreats, EO and YPO forums and workshops, and one-on-one training to help transform the lives of high-achieving entrepreneurs, executives, and their leadership teams worldwide. She's also CEO and chief spy mistress of the MI6 Academy and your Stiletto Spy School. I cannot wait to talk about being the chief spy mistress. And her mission is to help leaders shift from success to impact. And one of her core beliefs is, I'm going to read this slowly and efficiently, the degree to which you are self-aware is the degree to which you can successfully scale your organization. So we're going to be talking all about that and more. Alana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Darius. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is more mine. I'm going to tell you that right now. I found this quote over the weekend, and it's I'm going to read it to you, and it's why I like to sing to all my guests. You want me to give you this Plato quote?
I definitely want to know.
So I was like, man, why do I like music so much? Why do I like to sing? And this is the reason. So this is by Plato. So if Plato says it, you got to believe it. And he says, music gives a soul to the universe, wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. So that is why I like to sing. But man, I'm so pumped to have you here. Thanks for coming. Like, we're gonna have some fun right now.
Let's rock and roll.
Let's do it. So, I always like when I have my guests come on the show, I always like to take a step back, because especially if you're coming from the position of entrepreneurial, context, and, usually for people to get to where you're at right now, it's not like you're like, oh, I'm 16, I'm going to go become a master coach and teach people how to live their purpose and become self-aware. Said, maybe, you know what, I'm totally wrong. Maybe Don DePani did that when he was a monk when he was 16. But I didn't do that, and I doubt you did either. Would you mind giving us maybe some of your background and how did you get into entrepreneurism, and give us some of the origins? So I'd love to hear it.
Sure. So I was literally born to be an entrepreneur, in that everybody in my family was an entrepreneur, and it was the only acceptable life path in my family. Like other parents raise their kids to go have some normal, stable job. My parents, from the time I was 4, my dad used to say, "So, honey, what kind of business will you open when you grow up?" I remember I was like 10 or 11, and my dad said to me, like, "I just want you to know, I don't care if you have a hot dog stand and you stand outside in the cold selling hot dogs, as long as it's yours." I was like,
Right.
he said, "You don't get a job and work for anybody else," which was good because I was probably somewhat unemployable, as I didn't really follow the rules very well. Right. So, oh gosh, I started college really young. I started college just after I turned 16. And
What?
my dad, yeah, like a week after I turned 16.
Wait. Hold on. I'm not letting you get past this one. So hold on. So you're like, oh, so did you skip a grade or something? Like nobody just like kind of starts college when they're 16. Even if you start school a little early, that's still not normal. So give us some background on this.
I did start school early.
Okay.
So yeah, I learned how to read when I was really little. So I was in first grade by the time I was 4 and reading and everything. And then I just skipped through, but I didn't skip through much of high school, like just half of my last year of high school.
Wow. So you didn't have like the typical high school experience, or did you? I mean, as a 15-year-old, were you mature for high school, or were you like kind of over it, or were you like, I just want to get to college and get on with my life? What was the positioning there?
Yeah, I was, I guess I was mature for my age. I was pretty much over it. It was my last year of high school and it was winter break. And I just looked at my parents and I was like, I just can't go back. I can't go back and do another semester there. I've read everything. I'm done. It's time to go to college.
Wow. So it's funny. I usually like to pick songs based on when based on where people are from and based on kind of like their, like what was popular-ish when they were in high school, like music-wise. So before I read your song, which is The New Radicals, You Get What You Give, I was like, I bet you John Bon Jovi was really popular when she was in high school.
You're picking that because I was from New Jersey. Thank you very much.
I love that out. I know that she grew up in North Jersey because we did talk before the show, and I'm like, I'm gonna sing John Bon Jovi, but I chose the new. Would you have liked that, or would you have been like, would that have reminded you of high school? Not really, right?
No, I was not really a John Bon Jovi fan, I have to say. I wasn't.
I read the situation well.
Yeah. That New Radical song, by the way, is like, I think the theme song for not only for entrepreneurs, but for everybody that's trying something big. Like, I just flipping love that song. I love the lyrics to it. You're in harm's way. I'm right behind. Right. You've got the music in you. It's like, that's the message we need freaking every day. So
yeah, I love it.
So my dad said to me, at this, I'm 16 in a week. He said, "Look, you're going to open a business. So college is useless for you, but you're too young to start a business. So fine, I'll pay for you to go to college like for a little while." So wow. He's like, "It'll keep you busy." So when I turned 17, then they told me that, okay, I could, if I wanted to continue, I could go to any school that I wanted to. So I did all my research. I picked one school that I applied to. I got in and I came home with the tuition bill, and my dad was like, "Excuse me?" So he said, "Look, let me do the math here. Okay, if we add this up by the number of years you have left, this is enough money to start a business. I'll write you a check now for the whole thing. You'll never get another dime. You can either get money to start a business or you can go to school. Your choice, but you do not get another dime ever."
Wow. Oh, wow. So your dad was like Wesleyan or a business.
Yeah, totally.
And to his 16-year-old daughter, by the way.
Yeah. So I was like, I just figured I'd figure out later in life how to make money and start a business. So I was like, I want to go to school. So that was it. But then I got out of school, and I remember the day, right after school, he was like, "So, okay, now you're done. So what's your business now?" I was like,
Wait, so you kind of did, I mean, starting college. So when you were freshman year of college, were you 16, or at least like you had just turned 16 when you started college?
Yeah. Like literally my birthday is the end of December. So I had literally just, college start. I went to the January semester. So I
did you look older for your age, or did you look like a 16-year-old?
No, I looked older.
I was going to say, I'm like, that would be kind of weird if you're like a 19, 20-year-old person and a guy, let's say, and you see, I mean, I guess 16 and 19 is not that big of a difference. But if you're 22 in college, which a lot of people are, that's a big 6 years for some people. So you were mature. So you owned it, I'm assuming. And so you went in there and you know what? Like, I will tell you this, when I was 16, I could have gone to college. All my friends were in college when I was 16 for the most part. So some of us are just more, we're more ready to get after it, and you were one of them. So you get out of college and your dad's following his script.
Totally.
You didn't take the bait. He was trying to save money because you didn't take the bait.
Right. So he was very perplexed that I did not, like the day after graduation, have it all figured out. So,
yeah. Well, it's like, what are you going to start when you're 16? Like, to your point, hot dog stand, right? It's not like nowadays kids could start, like, there's a lot you can do that you couldn't do even 20 years ago. Right. Like if I was 20, I was 22, 20 years ago, and there was very few, like, it was really hard to start a business then.
There are kids now that are like 12 and 14 starting businesses. The amount, what you have technologically available to you with the internet, it's like there really are no boundaries.
Yeah.
So it's night and day.
It's a very low barrier to entry. This is why everyone is a CEO now, which I excuse my language, I fucking hate when I see that. I'm like, but are you though? I mean, dude, like, come on. You have to actually, like, be doing something to build a business to be a CEO. So I have qualms about this. This is me being like a snarky, like, Gen Xer, but I'll own that for myself. So you get out and your dad's like, all right, what business are you starting?
And I was
so you didn't even, like, go apply for jobs or anything like that. You just went straight. You knew what you had to do.
Yeah. In college, they were doing some recruiting on campus, and some of my friends that were concerned about my future dragged me down to downtown Middletown, Connecticut, to buy a suit to go on an interview. So I buy this blue suit and I go on an interview with one of the banks that's coming around on campus, and they bring me in for a second interview. So I come to the city, have a second interview, and I come home wearing this blue suit. And I remember I walk up to the door, my parents open the door, my dad opens the door, and he looks at me and he's standing in the doorway hysterically laughing at me. And I'm like, what? And he looks at me, he's like, where are you going in that?
So he's called you a suit. He's like, it is kind of funny though, right? Like, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, unless you're in banking or if you're in, like, the wealth management business or something, like,
right.
Feels a little premeditated.
Right, exactly. So my parents thought they thought my blue interview suit was very funny, and I did not get the job. So there you go. That was the only job interview I ever had. I didn't have a plan, and my dad looked at me and he's like, oh, kind of like I was a loser. And he said, I opened up a video store, his little side business. He was in the garment center. He was a New York City garmento. He's like, I opened up a little video store, and you can go and you can have a job for a month. I will pay you minimum wage, and you have a month to figure your life out.
So wait. So what part of the city was this in?
The video store was not in the city. The video store was in northern Westchester. It was like in cow country. It was like an hour plus away. It was seriously cow country. It was like middle of nowhere.
Wait, so your dad opened a video store, which this isn't like, the times. This is Blockbuster probably, or even like that's when Blockbuster was having its heyday. So one could argue this was pretty hip, right? To have a video store, and so this was how far away from your folks' place in Jersey?
Over an hour away. But think about it. It was in the middle of nowhere because these people up there had nothing else to do. They'd come in and they'd rent out 6 movies on a Tuesday because.
Oh, your dad was totally finagling supply and demand in his favor.
Yeah.
He was like the original Red Box in a ski town. So So you go, did you move out there or were you commuting?
I was commuting.
Oh, brutal. So you're commuting to like this, like the hick town, like just the boonies of Westchester to go run your dad's video store at the ripe old age of like 20.
At minimum wage.
Well, listen, Alana, we have yet something else in common. We've both worked at a video store for minimum wage. So.
Oh, that's right. You told me about the one that you worked at out in California.
I did. I loved working at the video store. It was one of my favorite jobs. I doubt you and I had the same. It was your dad's store, number one. So hold on. Did your dad have an adult section or no?
Totally.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Adult education.
That was high margin back then. Totally high margin.
It totally was high margin. It was the highest margin in the store.
Yeah. The adult section. Did he have like one of those curtains?
Yes.
So anyone who's over the age of, I want to say 35 knows what I'm talking about. Back in the day, for you youngsters who have no idea what we're talking about, this is pre-internet adult movies, porn, aka porn. If you went to a video store where it's where you got your movies because you couldn't download them online and they didn't send them to your house, you would go and there would be a section that had a curtain. And in the curtain, especially if you're like, I don't know if girls did this, but teenage boys, like if you're an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old boy and you see a curtain, the first thing you want to do is go, what the hell? You want to go see what's behind the curtain, not knowing what any of that stuff is. So I can remember going to a video store when I was like pretty young, like probably 7 or 8, being like, what the hell's behind the curtain? And the minute you see what's behind the curtain and you're like 8 years old, you're like, holy shit, I've never seen any of that before. So anyway, I could do a whole show on adult video stores pre-internet. Or not even adult. These are regular video stores with adult sections. So did you manage the store?
So at first I had a job as a clerk at minimum wage for a month. And then on the last day of the month, he called me and informed me that he just discovered that the manager who was stealing and he needed me to run the store. So I had a continued job and I suddenly got promoted to manager. I don't remember if he gave me a raise or not. He might not have given me a raise, but I still had a job. So, so I stayed, I worked for my dad for about 1.5 years, but over the course of time, after working there a few months, he said because he was really good at finding these other little towns that were like kind of in the middle of nowhere and these people had nothing else to do. So he was finding good locations for video stores. So he said, found another location. But at the time, videos were really expensive on a wholesale basis.
Yeah.
So, right. So he
like $100, right? They were like $100 each.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Can
crazy.
you imagine that?
Yeah. Right. People don't realize that, but that's what they were, wholesale. It's crazy. So he said, let's go around to other video stores and see if they have any inventory that maybe we can buy, cheap off of them, and they'd be happy to get rid of some stuff they've already rented out, and we could just have all the back stock for the store. So we did that for the other couple of stores, and stores were super successful because now we're opening stores at a fraction of the cost. So after I worked for my dad for, I don't know, it was a little over 1 year, he called me one day, and he says, as I was opening up the store up in the boonies, he called me and he said, 2 things that I tell you. One is you're fired. And the second thing I want to tell you is, you know how we went around and we got inventory for other stores that are opening up? I think there's a good business there.
Wow. So, the total, the arbitrage play.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Wow.
So, all right. I can take a hint. So can I get some of the inventory from your store that, probably has run its course here and use that as the start for my business? And he was like, yep, okay. So by 3:00 that day, I was in business. So that's when I started my first company.
Can I ask you one question, and then I want to go into the new company? What was the name of your dad's video store?
Northern Westchester Video. Very creative.
Oh, that's so creative. And where was it located? Northern Westchester?
The first one was in Somers, New York. And there was one in Peekskill. And I forget where the others were, but those were the first 2.
So it's interesting, like retail and it's probably, I don't know if it's the same now, but my dad was in retail. He owned gas stations. So he had the same problem though. People always stole from him. That was like the deal. Like you just had I think they call that runoff in business now. You just have a certain amount. You use breakage, leakage. You just have a certain amount that people are going to take, right?
My dad used to say to me, as long as they steal and leave you enough. There's a saying in Yiddish with chachmunis, which means like with a heart, as long as they steal with a heart, that they leave enough for you.
Yeah. Steal with the heart, please. Like you got to wet my beak. So your dad's like, you're fired. We got this video, our business, because again, back then, I'm going to put this in perspective again for listeners who are younger that don't know this. I remember my family bought our first VCR, which a VCR is what you used to watch videos on before DVDs, before you could stream them on your phone and on your TV at home, if you even have a TV at home now. And so I remember we got our first. It was VHS because there was two options, beta or VHS. Did you do beta or VHS for your business?
For a while, we had both.
Yeah, beta was interesting because I think beta got really popular on the production side of the business, but for the actual like retail consumption, it was mostly VHS. Mm-hmm. And so, if you wanted to play one of those things, because back then you had like 7 TV channels, this is pre-cable, like you would have to spend. I want to say my family spent $1,200 for our first VCR.
Yeah,
this is in like now I'm in date. This is in 1983. That would be like spending $5,000 now for a device to watch movies on at your house. Mm-hmm. So put it in perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine, the content was not digital, as analog as you can get. Each one of these things to then go and re-rent was about $100 each. So your business was like, hey, I'm going to go and buy. So dated inventory would be they have 3 copies of Bachelor Party and they only need 1, right?
You got it exactly.
They're like, we don't really rent 3. Like Tom Hanks is, he's this new guy on the street, but Bachelor Party's not renting quite like we thought it would. We misjudged that one. We should have only bought 1 copy. We bought 3. We have these 2 that sit there and don't ever get rented. So Alana to the rescue. And what was the name of this business that you started?
Stock Rotation Services.
Oh, how'd you guys name that?
Again, very creative.
Is it like, stock stock rotation? Oh,
exactly. Rotating the inventory, right? Exactly.
Oh, this is like you guys must have come from a long line of copywriters. You're not.
Not a family
movie in a box that you watch. So you start this business where you're buying, like, so let's say it was $100 for me to buy a new copy of Bachelor Party or Porky's. What would you buy it for?
I'd usually go into a store and buy it for like 20 and sell it for 40.
So you would go buy Porky's 2 for $20, and then you would go find East Westchester video store and say, hey, do you guys need another copy of Porky's? And they're like, oh, Porky's gets rented like crazy. This is like smut. So you would then flip it and you would double the price and make a little bit of money.
Double or more, sure.
That's awesome. So how big did this business get?
Gosh, I mean, I started it literally out of the trunk of my car and then had ultimately a warehouse in New Jersey with like 35 people and shipping to all over the country and libraries and grocery store chains, we just supplied everywhere.
And how did you get most? I mean, I take it you weren't just driving around like asking people if they wanted to sell their inventory. You created like a funnel and people would send them to you, and you have like a price list and all that good stuff, and you knew what you were willing to pay for it, or how did that work?
When I literally did start the business driving around and finding clients. 100% the way I started the business. I spent a year on the road driving around and finding clients, going door to door.
Wow.
Right. And then, started hiring people that would, having banks of people that were on the phones and calling people. And then we'd start negotiating. But generally, a lot of our inventory would come even though the video stores were booming, there were still people that were going out of business. So we would buy stores that were going out of business. That's how we would get a lot of inventory. We would work with some of the manufacturers and get overstock from some of the movie studios or some of the other distributors. And then when there were just stores, individual stores that were selling stuff, I had some people that would literally go out to stores and see stuff. Some stuff would be over the phone, but some they would, team would go out and drive around and visit stores.
Did you have any type of strategy around movie buying, or was it like, I mean, obviously one man's, garbage is another man's gold, but how did you find out that I got to imagine it's like, oh, Disney movies are the best. Those ones, they get rented every weekend because people want to shut their kids up, or was there any strategy around what was to buy, or it had to be popular, or was it just kind of like, we're paying such a low price, this is easy? How did you guys figure that out?
That's an interesting question, because I think that's a universal question in any market, right? In any market, it's about listening to the marketplace and hearing and understanding. What you said about one man's junk is another man's treasure, right? Is true in any market. So, we would have somebody in Texas that was like, oh man, somebody who went to Vassar and then moved to a small town in Texas and opened up a store and had this great section of foreign films, and shockingly, nobody wanted to rent the foreign films. And then they'd call us and be like, but, we know we can sell them in Boston and San Francisco and et cetera, right? Or,
right.
People that were dumping tons of kids' films, but there were grocery store chains that we could put in racks into a chain of grocery stores and have a kids section. And it would be great that all the moms were going to and needed something for their kids. And it was great.
So the business started off in the trunk of your car, you driving around, just literally hustling, which is exactly what, there's no other word to describe that.
Right.
And you were 20, 21 years old. So you were probably just starting to drink right when you were hustling videos on the road. That's actually kind of a cool time in your life, I would assume. I mean, you probably were did you enjoy it, or were you just drinking from the fire hose, or you were like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how did you feel when this started to really pick up traction?
It was fun, and honestly, it was a super profitable business. It was ridiculous. And I could work whatever hours I wanted to. I mean, until, when I had an actual warehouse and staff. In the year before I had a warehouse and staff, I could work whatever hours I wanted to. And I could take off and travel whenever I wanted to. And it was great. And then when I opened up a warehouse, it was super busy. And that part, again, was great. There's something you and I talked about the other day, though. So the point is, I fell into this business. I completely fell into it because it was there. It was an opportunity. And it was a great opportunity. It was a great money-making opportunity. And the business was just exploding. The video business had a long run heyday. Most people don't know this, but the American film industry almost completely disappeared. Hollywood was on the verge of bankruptcy until the home video business came along. And the home video business infused so much cash into Hollywood that's what saved the American film industry. Wow. So there would be the trade shows, and the Hollywood studios would send all the big stars. It was super fun. You had a ton of people that were in the video business that came out of the record industry. So you had a bit of the rock and roll and everything that went along with that. So there was a bit of glam, and it was really fun. After a while, like any business and like as any industry matures, the business eventually started to get difficult, and profit margins went from huge to shrinking, and then became super competitive. So when we started and we were doing all arbitrage, we then eventually had to go to also carrying all the new releases, because now we had a ton of clients that it was beyond just their opening their stores, right? The kind of whole rush of people opening stores had subsided. So now we had to have a sustainable business. We had to service existing clients. And so to service existing clients, we had to start supplying them with the new releases every week. Well, the new releases every week are a commodity business because everybody has the same movies that come out on the same day. So in any commodity business, your margins shrink to razor thin, right? So business stopped being fun. And
how How long did that take? How long did that take for you? Because if you're 20 when you started, how far are we? Where are we at in your life? How old are you at this point?
Gosh, that's a good question.
Ballpark.
Yeah, I don't know, ballpark 30-ish. 30s.
Okay, so this is about a decade into you building. You're close to a decade into you building this business.
Yeah.
You spent all your 20s. It sounds to me like fun at first, lots of freedom. Then it became a real business with a ton of responsibility, and you're like doing what you do, which is grind your way as you scale, right?
Totally.
And then margin compression kicks in. So this thing that was actually paying probably fairly well isn't paying as well, and it's a grind. And you're a decade, and you're going out of your 20s into your 30s. So what happens?
So I try everything to keep myself entertained in the business and to find meaning in it. You know, my warehouse was in a town in New Jersey that I was in Garfield, New Jersey, and the next town was Passaic, which was kind of a lower income area. So I was like, all right, I'll start hiring welfare moms and give them a chance and give them training. And like that will be sort of the social feature of my business. So I started doing that for a while. And then I realized that there was so much more to that than I had thought about. And I was starting to, honestly, Darius, I was just starting to burn out. I mean, I really remember one morning waking up and pulling the covers over my head because I did not want to get up and go to my own office. I remember days of driving out to my office in Garfield, New Jersey, and sitting in the parking lot looking at the door and not wanting to go inside. It super sucked. It super sucked. So I wound up, long story short, I had some issues with staff. I had one of my top employees steal from me after I'd like paid for his honeymoon night for his wedding and, you know, give him huge bonuses and all that stuff. And then found out that he was stealing from me and cleaning out my warehouse. I had a bookkeeper that embezzled and took out a line of credit in my name and almost put me out of business. I like the nightmare.
They weren't stealing with a heart of gold?
They were not stealing with a heart.
Gosh, someone needs to teach them not to steal so badly against. Come on. You can't murder the person when you're stealing. You got to leave a little meat on the bone.
Right.
So the no stealing, no heart. That you're now, yeah. And is this happening? Kind of all. It's funny how shit happens, right? Where I feel like when things start going bad in business, all the walls close in. Like everything that can go bad happens all at the same time. I would argue it's part of like not having. I believe that happens for a reason because we're not approaching the business with the right intention, and it allows these things to creep in. What do you think about that?
I completely agree with you. Right. And this was the big realization. And it got worse because I didn't even want to be there. I was close. I did a business with a lot of my competitors in that industry. A lot of us, we would just trade inventory. If you got stuck with too many copies of Bachelor Party, but somebody else had Porky's, we'd trade. Right. So I was friendly with all of my competitors. So, we'd all bitch and moan to each other because frankly, at that point, everybody hated the business. But I had one of my competitors that, I'd known for a really long time. I was lucky in that I had cracked the market of selling to public libraries, where unlike when you were doing business with retail stores closed, went out of business, you get stuck with bad debt, etc. Public libraries had great financing. They weren't going anywhere. You could probably still have a business today in 2021 supplying videos and DVDs to public libraries because they still buy, and some of them have in huge budgets. Like you can't believe how big the budgets are for the public libraries. It's a very hard market to crack into. It takes a long time, but I had gotten that market. So one of my competitors saw the opportunity there and came to me with a great business proposal to merge our companies, et cetera, and create a new company together. I could go off and I could live overseas, which is what I wanted to do. He was going to manage all the day-to-day and the finances, and I would just do the marketing stuff and handle any of the big clients. And then lo and behold, that was all great until my business partner embezzled from me.
So this person's outside the deal, trying to do an M&A with you, or a merger of two businesses, and then the business partner who's inside your business steals from you. Or
no, we did the merger.
The merger guy ends up stealing from you.
Yeah. We did the merger.
Oh my God.
Exactly. Yeah.
Through that guy.
After all the other employee stuff, right? And now I've got a business partner that embezzles. And when I thought about it, Darius, and even at the time, and certainly looking back at it, you're right. It was that I left the door open for all of these things to happen because I wasn't aligned with the business. There was nothing in there that I was passionate about. There was nothing in there. You and I have talked a lot about core values that had not occurred to me at that time. So when the business got tough and I was checked out of it, I left the door open for this stuff to happen. Yeah. And that was my greatest takeaway.
Yeah. So when, you can tell us what happened, but did you end up selling the business or closing it? How'd you get out of that trade?
I wound up, I filed a lawsuit, which did not serve me at all, because that's a whole other conversation that we can have for any business owners who have ever had to be in a lawsuit. It sucks. And it's just, it's the worst. It's the worst. But I did wind up getting every penny back from my embezzling business partner.
Good for you.
Thank you. And then because I still had the library customers, there was still a business there to sell, even though he had run it into the ground. So I did wind up selling the business.
So you sold the business. Thank God that happened. The only people that win in lawsuits are the lawyers, like without question. If you count all my fingers and toes, I've had more lawsuits than those. So I'm the master, and I hate lawsuits, and I'm not a litigious person, but I have dealt with my fair share of lawsuits. So you're out, you sell the business. I want to hear all about where you went from there.
I was in a small town in Italy traveling with one of my friends on a hot summer day when my cell phone rings, and it's the lawyer telling me that we're all done, the sale is done, the escrow is deposited, etc. Right? And I remember, and in that moment, I hung up and I thought, now what, right? Because suddenly there were going to be no more emails to answer, no more phone calls to answer, nothing. No documents, nothing. Like I had nothing to do. And I turned to my friend and she was like, what do you want to do? And I was so lost. I was like, go get ice cream.
That's called, I made up a name for that, which I probably didn't make up, but I call it the void.
Yeah.
You get big, fat, by the way, the reason this show was born out of my The Void.
Really?
Yeah. I exited my company. I was bored out of my mind. And I was like, I've been wanting to start a show for a while. So here we are. This is episode 125. And I started July last year. In the middle, I closed on my deal July 1st. The void. Yeah, the void's real when you're an entrepreneur. So you had the void, you go get ice cream. And how the hell does that lead to what's next? Because you've been doing some amazing stuff since then. I want to hear all about that. And we have about 17 minutes. So you got to give me the quick version. By the way, I'm sorry. You're like, we got to give we were talking before the show and we were talking about strategizing about ways to do the show. And I didn't tell you how much I love origin stories. I think they're the most interesting part of the entrepreneurial journey is hearing how people learned what they learned. And then obviously the come out, like when you come out of that, like, what do you do with it? But yeah, tell us about that.
So I came out of that and a couple of things happened. I will tell you that probably for about a year, I didn't even want to go to, you mentioned EO, that we were both part of Entrepreneurs Organization. I didn't want to go to events. I didn't want to go to anything because I was so afraid that people were going to ask me, so what do you do? And I wouldn't have an answer.
Yeah.
I remember a friend of mine gave me a book called Chapters by Faye, I'm blanking on her name at the moment. She started a company called iVillage, and it's a great book for anybody who's going through this. And it talked about these very predictable stages that you go through in the void. So I found that really helpful. At least I'm not alone in that. And one of the stages that she talks about all the things that you're not only feeling lost, she'd like all the times you're going to reorganize your closet. And I was laughing because, of course, I was in the middle of reorganizing my closet until you find something. And then you get to the stage and she calls planting a flag, right? So planting a flag, how did I finally get to the planting a flag stage? So a couple of things happened. Through this entrepreneurs organization, they have these groups called the forums. And somebody said to me, oh, you'd be great at working with the forums. And for those of you who are listening who are not aware of that, the forums are these small groups of entrepreneurs that meet once a month. And the idea is that they can openly share and discuss anything. But there are guidelines around that and about learning to check your ego at the door and really speak from experience and not give people advice and step back and understand where you're really coming from and understand what the core issue is. And I was always fascinated with the concept. So when somebody said to me, wow, you'd be great working with the forums on that, I lit up because that's the kind of stuff I'd always been interested in, since I was a kid. I had read all these books on personal development. My degree was in psychology, how we think, and sort of the Eastern wisdom traditions and the concept of ego and how we listen to others. So I started doing that. And that led to, as soon as I started working with groups, and I would do all the regular standard material for the organization, but I'd start sharing other things that I was thinking about. And the reactions I would get from people were super powerful. And entrepreneurs started saying to me, hey, wow, can you come and speak to my leadership team? We're struggling with some communication stuff. Can you help us with that? And can you coach me one-on-one also? And at this time, and let me tell you about the spy school stuff in a minute, but the key that was underlying this, at this time, I started thinking about what in that year of the void, as I was thinking about what I was going to do next and what was going to drive that, I came across this concept of core values. And I went to a workshop that Peter Thomas, who's an entrepreneur, took Century 21 to Canada. He's a great entrepreneur. And Peter built an incredible business. And when his son was about 21, his son committed suicide. And Peter suddenly realized, right, that he was so focused on his business, but maybe wasn't focused on what other things were important in life. So he went on this deep personal journey of discovering core values and how you create a meaningful life. And I went to a workshop with Peter. And that was really eye-opening for me and thinking about what my core values were and what a meaningful life would look like for me. Yeah. So I started down that journey and started working on codifying and identifying those. And as those were crystallizing, people were asking me if I would work with them. And I saw that that was the perfect merger. And this was the difference. And that's what had been missing all along in the other business that I had and missing in my life, really. So that was the big kind of aha revelation for me of digging in and understanding what my core values were and how those would be the value that I could bring to others and how I could magnify that. And then how I could help others discover that and how I could help leadership teams discover that, because when a leadership team discovers that, how that's the rocket fuel to their success.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, obviously you're talking about one of my two, I have three favorite subjects. Core values, one. Pizza is my second one. And which I forgot you sent me to that group on Facebook. I told Alana that I love pizza, and there's this like secret pizza Facebook group, and I went on there and was like, this is amazing. So don't, unless you, well, if you want, email me and maybe Alana, and we might invite you. Anyway, I forgot we have that in common. So I wrote a book on core values, which I think the core value equation. And what's funny was I'm such a word person. Like someone called me a word warrior. I realized I hadn't looked up what the definition of core values is. Do you know what the actual definition of core values is?
Oh my gosh, I've never looked up to like see what Merriam-Webster says about it. What do they say about it?
I hadn't either, which is kind of ridiculous when you write a freaking book about it. I thought it was kind of ironic. It is the fundamental beliefs of a person or an organization. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But so what's funny is, there's a lot of data out there, and the data is that, I think it's 89% of companies, less than 80% of their employees know their company core values. And Gallup has data that only 27% of companies believe that their core values are actually true. So when you start to looking at, so here's two things I just said. Core values are the fundamental beliefs of your business. Oh, and nobody knows them or believes them.
Right.
That's a fucking problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? And so why do you have people doing crazy things like, dragging a doctor off a flight and
Right.
Why does crazy behavior happen?
Because the fundamental beliefs are not alive and well in the organization. And so what's interesting is what are your core values, by the way? Do you mind sharing them with the show?
Mine? Sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
How many do you have, first of all?
3.
Oh, I like that. Okay. Jim Collins and Jerry Porras in Built to Last say visionary organizations have no less than 3 and no more than 6 in general. So what are your 3 values?
Wisdom, grace, and connection.
I like that. Those are cool.
Thank you.
And have you built descriptives to say what those mean for your life?
I haven't written out descriptions, but I certainly have internal descriptions, right? So for me, well, I love knowledge, and knowledge is knowing things, right? Wisdom is knowing what the essence of something is. Wisdom is knowing what to subtract, right? To be able to look at something and just know what the essence is, what matters.
I'm going to offer this to you as a gift. I want to help you design your values.
Okay.
We'll do it offline, and if you want, it's an offer. You'd like this is just something. Whenever I see opportunities, I want you to experience the design side of values.
That is super fun. I would love to do that because it's right. So when I work with a company, we take their core values and turn them into operating principles. Yeah. But I haven't done that. But I'd love to play with you on mine and turn mine into a design. I love that.
Yeah, I know there's this big thing out there around the operating principles, and my issue with those is they themselves are not designed to become because my whole thing is I believe values the opportunity to become the language of the organization. So, but you have to design for them to be adopted as the language. And so what ends up happening is people create these things and some are successful at getting them operationalized, but I think it's a heavier lift than it needs to be. This is like, if you want to interview me, I will tell you my thoughts on this, but I want to hear, I'm going to sidetrack myself right now because I'm starting to go down my own rabbit hole. I want to hear about, so you fully discovered this thing around values, which for those of you that have discovered it, it kind of is an understatement. It rocks your world when you really get into it, where you're like, holy shit, like this controls everything I do. Right. Yes. And then it becomes a tool that you can use that with. And so for you left this business that you didn't love. You fell in love with this concept of forum and values, and forum's a really cool thing because it's peer-to-peer learning. And I think naturally when people have good forums, they find a intuitive alignment around values, and then they can kind of vibe off each other. And we all do this as human beings. If you find someone that shares your fundamental beliefs and they find someone who shares their fundamental beliefs, you start to get that synergistic effect out of it. Great teams have this. How did you take that and you built, MI6, you built the Stiletto Bicycle. I know we're coming in the last 5 minutes, but I want to hear a little bit about that and we'll get wrapped up. But then we might have to have a part 2 of this.
Awesome.
I told you, I can't even do a show for under 45 minutes. It's impossible for me. So tell us about MI6 and Stiletto Bicycle, and then I'm just gonna say right now, we're having part 2. So sorry, everybody.
So at the same time that I was figuring out what I was going to do next, I had gone to see a Bond movie with one of my friends. And I said something to her as we left the theater that I'd been thinking about since I was a little girl. I said, it's too bad there's not like boot camp we could go to for a weekend and learn to be Bond girls in a weekend. And she looked at me, she's like, that's awesome. Right. From the time I was little, I used to sit and I'd watch all these movies with my dad, and I'd watch all these characters in the movies. Now, mind you, I was a little girl who wore a white dress and Mary Jane's, and I sat on my tricycle because I did not want to get a spot on my dress. I did not run around on the playground. I never learned how to ride a bicycle. I didn't roller skate. I didn't do any sports. I didn't do anything. But when I grew up, I was going to be like one of those girls in the movies, and like they do everything. They ride motorcycles and they shoot guns and they can jump off mountains, right? So I figured there must be a school that they go to where you learn all these things, because how else would So when I was little, I used to pull out the yellow pages and try to flip through the yellow pages and find that school that I was going to go to one day, but I couldn't find it. So
wait, what section did you look in the yellow pages? Would you
badass in a cat suit?
Badass in a cat suit? You don't look at the letter S for spy school?
No listings.
Damn, badass in a cat suit. I love it. So you wanted to, so then you said, well, screw it, I'm just gonna start my own then.
So I said this to one of my friends. I was like, that would be so cool. She calls me up the next morning and she says, I've been thinking about that all night. You're in transition. You're looking for something new to do. Why don't you do that? And I was like, that's crazy. Who else would want to go to that? She's like, well, I would want to go to that. So I started asking a bunch of people. Everybody's saying yes. I was sitting with one of my friends and her mother, who was in her 80s. And I'm telling my friend about it. And her mom, who's in her 80s, leans across the table and she says, can I come too? And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm building it. We're in.
So is it specifically was it centered around women? Like, you have to be female to join this, or can anyone?
No. So my concept was that we would all love to learn to do these things, but we're not going to go and take a year out of our life to go and, live with some Zen master and learn samurai sword fighting and then go and learn shooting, right? We want to just kind of get the basics of it, both men and women. So I spent a year creating the curriculum and finding all the experts and figure out what we could learn in a consolidated period of time. So there are two programs. There's MI6 Academy, which is any corporate event, any mixed gender event. And then there's Stiletto Spy School, which is when we run programs that are just for women. The curriculum is very similar. The takeaways are similar, but there's a slightly different twist. In the program that's just for women, there's a lot of conversation about power and femininity, right? And how we see those two things and the differences between them. Mm-hmm. Because in the women's program, frankly, right after you learn how to shoot an AK-47, we might have strippers come in and teach you how to do other things. So
I love it. Yeah, pole dancing and machine guns.
There you go. And in the corporate program, there's, in working with all of these instructors, I found patterns in the way that they think that is super applicable to us in life and business. And it's the same, no matter whether it's the Navy SEALs or the Russian Spetsnaz or the stunt car drivers or the poker players. There's a way that they approach situations that lets them get control in chaotic circumstances, right? Because for all of them, that's what they're dealing with, circumstances. So it's the way that they are present in the moment. I call it tactical mindfulness. And the way that they're present in the moment, and they learn to recognize their assumptions and their biases, because they can't act from those. They have to react to what's actually happening, right? They have to, right? So that's the takeaway. So it's really fun. So we do that for any kind of corporate teams, and we do it everywhere. And that's what MI6 Academy and Stiletto Spy School are about.
Oh my gosh. I'm so pissed right now. I have a hard stop because I'm supposed to teach people core values in a second. TBD to be continued, TBC. So we're gonna continue this conversation. I want to dig way more into Stiletto Spy School. We're gonna talk all things values, and we're gonna hear a lot more about what you're doing at MI6. Does that sound good?
Sounds awesome. I can't wait.
Will you give the audience, because I'm going to decide if we're going to just make this 2 different podcasts or what, but can you maybe let everyone know where they can find you? And then you're going to be one of the 2 people that I've sang to twice. So this will be awesome.
They can find me at alanawinter.com or mi6academy.com.
Awesome. You guys, so much gratitude here with Alana, and oh my gosh, I love this conversation. I can't wait for the next part 2 of this. Guys, join us. We're gonna have to reschedule for part 2. We're gonna dive deeper into I want us to go way deeper into values, because I think that there's a lot of meat on that bone, and I want to hear way more about what you're doing. So we're going to do that. All of my team schedule it. With that said, I think I got some other shows this week. Stay tuned. And Alana, thank you so much. So much gratitude having you here.
Thank you. Same here, Darius.
Appreciate you. Guys, we'll talk soon. Peace out. We love you. We out of here.